So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to. Hope you guys are having a great time, having a wonderful, wonderful time. I'm your boy Brain T. Hope you stayed consistent, unlike me, like I'm a little bitch. Welcome to day 38 relapse workout grind. It's been such a while, that I've actually started the stream at the right time at 6 a.m. Such a while, bro. Oops, that's not it. That's not it either. Oh, there you go. Where have I been? How am I doing? What's happening? So, I have just been here. Just nothing going on with me. There's no justification as to why I just left. I mean, not left. More like I didn't stay consistent. I just didn't do it. Which is weird. I just keep doing that kind of shit. I don't wanna. But I feel like, I don't know. I'm built to not last. Oh, no, I know why. Because I was trying new things and then the new things backfired because it wasn't sustainable. And in the process, I also ruined my uh, established routine because it was in conflict. So, yeah, that's what happened. I did manage to try to get back yesterday. I did jog, but it was like 8 a.m. or something. Thankfully, it was not like really hot at that time. It was still cloudy, so I did manage to do it without getting too much sunburn or something. Today, I'm really thankful with my alarms. I managed to wake up early despite sleeping last night at 12 a.m. Uh, oh, what am I doing? I'm doing a relapse part 2. So last week I barely managed to work out at all. I think I did. No, I didn't work out Tuesday. Oh no, I think I did work out last week at like Wednesday for biceps, but I didn't follow it up at weekends. Still pretty sad. I'm gonna do some sort of, I don't know, comeback today. I'm gonna try to work out really hard and do some programming grades in the process as well. I hope I don't fuck this up and like I'm actually gonna do this the right way today. So yeah, I'm gonna start. My room is clean. I don't really have a reason not to do this. It's just, yeah, I feel good. Hopefully, I get to start consistently when will this end. Anyways, sorry, just forget me. Oh, how's business going with my laptop? They're still here, and I'm also buying another one on Thursday. I'm buying another laptop despite knowing that it's really, really, really hard to ship them. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to think about that right now. I want to put a designated time for that. I need to control myself and not just, jump around to things. I just need to put that over today's to-do list. Alright, so today's to-do list, it's gonna be figure out how to ship in the Philippines. Because I'll get fucked up. Yeah. Alright. So timer's done. The timer's just for me. Avoid yapping overload. Just in case I yap too much. Let's start. Oh man, I'll lose my muscles. No. No. Fuck. I've lost all my gains. That is fucked up. Just
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jocelyn, and for today's topic, I am going to discuss how to send LGC balikbayan bags from USA to Philippines. But before we get started, please like this video, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome. The answer is yes. Based on the current rules of the Bureau of Customs in the Philippines, anyone can send balikbayan access to the Philippines, even corporations, partnerships, and sole proprietors, but only a qualified Filipino while abroad can avail of the tax and duty-free privilege of balikbayan access under the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act. So that means whether you are a Filipino or non-Filipino, or if you're considered a foreign national, you can send balikbayan access to the Philippines. So I will explain in detail all the requirements and who are considered qualified Filipinos for purposes of availing of the tax and duty-free privilege. I will also include information on the LBC box that I use when sending a balikbayan box to the Philippines. So that is the company that I use because it is a reputable company and I can easily track where my shipment was or the status of shipment. Now, who are qualified Filipinos for duty and tax exemption purposes? There are three classifications. First, resident Filipinos, or those Filipinos residing abroad. Second, non-resident Filipinos, or those traveling to a foreign country for business or educational purposes. Also, overseas Filipino workers. There is another question. When sending balikbayan bags to the Philippines, do you need to declare your citizenship? The answer is no, you don't need to declare your citizenship. Let's talk about the items that you can send to the Philippines. This is the most commonly asked question. What can I put in my balikbayan box if I want to avail of the balikbayan box privilege? You can only send household effects and personal effects. That means you cannot send items which are in commercial quantities. So this is based on the current rules of the Bureau of Customs in the Philippines. A good rule of thumb is not more than 20 items of each kind for consumable goods. So if you send food items, not more than 20 items of each kind. Also, for non-consumable items, not more than 5 items of each kind for non-consumable goods. For example, if you're sending electronic items to Philippines, you cannot have more than 5 items of each kind because it is considered non-consumable goods. Also, you cannot send items which are for sale, barter, or hire, and those which are prohibited or restricted. There are also importation limits for wine and liquor, also for cigarettes and cigars, which are subject to payment of excise tax only. Let's talk about the weight limit.
Just
The LBC
5.
box that I used is considered as sea cargo and there is no weight limit, but the shipment time is longer. If you are using it by air, different rates for various weight. How much it costs to send LBC bags to the Philippines? For those of you who are asking how much to send LBC bags to Philippines, it depends on the size of the box. So the one that I used is a large box, and for sea cargo, a flat rate of $80 for a large box, and there is no weight limit. If you're sending by air, there are different rates for different weight. So for the LBC box that I used, I have like a large box, and you will be provided a free box if you are going to have it picked up by LBC. So it's actually $80 for a large box. However, if you're planning to send by air, 3 pounds is $25 flat rate, and there is a tax for electronics, $30, and the lead time is 16 days or 16 days before it arrives. How many times can I send a balikbayan box? There's actually no limit unless you will avail of the balikbayan box privilege. Now there is another question. How many times can I avail of the balikbayan box privilege? A qualified Filipino abroad can avail of the balikbayan box privilege up to 3 times or up to 3 shipments in a calendar year. The total amount of all the shipments should not be more than 150,000 pesos in a calendar year, or it is actually equivalent to around 3,000 US dollars. However, if you avail of the balikbayan box which exceeded the allowed quantities or values, so anything in excess of the allowable quantity, amount, or frequency shall be subject to duties and taxes and civil and criminal liabilities. Now, how long will it take from the shipper to the recipient to receive the LBC box? Per LBC, it is usually 60 days, but there are some delays from the shipment, so add more 10 to 15 days. Let's talk about how to track your LBC bags. You'll be given a shipper's export declaration and packing list, so you will need to put your personal information like the name and address of the consignee, and you will be assigned a tracking number, so you can use the tracking number to track your shipment online. To track your shipment, just go to lbcexpress.com and enter your valid tracking number. You can also sign up for updates from your Facebook Messenger. I'm showing to you the number of days when your shipment will arrive depending on the destination in the Philippines. I'm showing to you a copy of the tracking status based on my own personal experience. So the shipment left on October 14 and it arrived at Hong Kong on November 19. There are various dates that you can see on the tracking status. That means your shipment goes to various countries as shown here in the tracking status. It left Hong Kong and also Taiwan, and it arrived at the Manila International Container Port on December 15. So that's exactly like 60 days from the time of shipment. It also needs to secure clearance from the Bureau of Customs in the Philippines, and once it's done, the shipment will be sent to the LBC Manila warehouse and for distribution. Does the recipient need to pay customs tax when receiving the shipment or package? The recipient do not need to pay customs tax. So if you are the recipient, you shouldn't shell out any money to receive the box. Also, if you are planning to retire in the Philippines, you can also use the balikbayan package or balikbayan box to send your items. If you have any other questions or comments, please post them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Again, thank you guys for supporting my channel. And if you haven't liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome new subscribers. Thank you guys for watching. I hope everyone is staying safe and have a great day.
There is this research paper that has been on my mind for years. It shows that there is a particular type of problem where the smarter you are, the more likely you are to get it wrong. So I asked my American friend Wiley to go out on the street and ask people the questions from the study to see if we could replicate its findings. The first question in the paper is about a fictitious study on skin cream. So in this made-up study, people with skin rashes are assigned to either the experimental group, where they use a new cream for 2 weeks, or the control group, where they use no cream for that same period. And at the end, they count up how many rashes improved and how many got worse in each treatment group. The results are summarized in this table. So the question study participants were asked was,
did the skin cream make the rash better, or did it make it worse?
the question is a little tricky because it requires proportional reasoning.
I think better.
Better? So what are you looking at, just real quick?
I'll be honest, I'm just looking at how big the numbers are.
If you just look for the biggest number, well, that is the group who used the skin cream and the rash improved.
So this number is bigger than this number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you might conclude that the cream worked. It makes rashes better. That is the intuitive answer. But if you look more carefully at the data and use proportional reasoning, you realize that in the experimental cream group, about 3 times as many people got better as got worse. But in the control group, around 5 times as many people got better than worse. So using no cream, your rash was significantly more likely to improve. In fact, it's a fair conclusion to say that the cream, on average, made rashes worse. The lead author on this study was Dan Kahan.
I'm studying the science of science communication.
He and colleagues recruited a nationally diverse sample of 1,111 Americans to participate. But before answering the question on skin cream, each participant was asked a series of questions to assess their numeracy.
A numeracy, it's not so much the capacity to use complicated mathematics, but really to reason well about quantitative information.
Numeracy scores for the entire sample were roughly normally distributed. Now, if you group together all the participants with a certain numeracy score, say group all the zeros together, all the ones together, all the twos, and so on, well, what fraction of each group do you think got the skin cream question right? Well, the results are exactly what you'd expect.
Oh, this is math.
It's math.
In a fifth of the people, which is a smaller number,
Uh-huh.
the rash worsened, so the skin cream didn't help.
So it didn't make it better.
I feel like the cream, if anything, made it worse.
The higher the numeracy score, the greater the fraction of participants who got the answer right.
Yeah, I don't think the numbers mean anything to me. Because
Okay.
I think
perfectly fine
I
answer.
would need to know what's the rash and what's the cream you're giving me.
Those with better numeracy skills managed to avoid the intuitively correct answer.
What are the proportions?
We've had nobody get into the numbers like this. This is great.
Excellent. You got that right.
Okay.
And correctly determine that the cream actually made rashes worse, which is no big surprise. But this version of the skin cream question was only shown to some of the participants. Another subset saw the same exact table, except the column headings were reversed. So in this case, the skin cream did make the rashes better. So how did the different numeracy groups do with this version? Well, again, the highest numeracy groups were the most likely to get the correct answer. But below a numeracy score of 5, the results were pretty flat. That could be because even without any numerical reasoning, most people might expect a skin cream to improve a rash, which just happens to be the right answer in this case. But the true purpose of the study was not to find out how numeracy affects our ability to reason accurately with data. No, it was to figure out if something else affects our reasoning ability, specifically politics. If you look at the skin cream data again, but separate the participants by their self-reported political affiliations, so liberal Democrats versus conservative Republicans, there's basically no difference between the groups. All follow the same pattern irrespective of party. Which makes sense, because a study on skin cream is about as apolitical as it gets. But what the researchers did with the other half of the participants was the opposite. Instead of skin cream, they presented a fictitious study on gun control. In case you don't know, Democrats generally believe that gun control reduces crime, whereas Republicans believe it increases crime because it takes guns out of the hands of good guys who could prevent or deter crime. So, in their made-up study, cities were divided into 2 groups. Those that had recently enacted legislation making it illegal to carry a concealed handgun, and similar cities that had no such legislation. Over the following year, crime rates were monitored to see where crime increased and where it decreased, and the results are summarized in the table. Again, no surprise, it's exactly the same as the skin cream example. Of course, there were two variations, one where gun control decreased crime and one where it increased crime. Now, if you look at the results by political leaning, they paint a very different picture.
It's kind of obvious. If you have guns in the city, people are going to start shooting people. And, you know, if you don't have guns and you outlaw them, cities are obviously going to have less crime in them. But the thing is like, you can't just take people's guns away and say that they're illegal, you know? Like, that's just, it's kind of like drugs.
So wait, but these numbers though, how did you just come to that conclusion?
When Republicans are shown the table where the correct answer is gun control laws increase crime, then the accuracy improves with increasing numeracy, just as before. But for the Republicans who are shown the table where gun control decreases crime, well, numeracy skills no longer affect accuracy. Those with a numeracy score of 7 or 8 are barely more likely to answer correctly than those with a score of 0 or 1.
So where the crime improved, like there can be crimes that were prevented because the guns were legal, and the crimes that were worsened, that could have been other crimes like not related to guns, you know?
And the same is true in reverse for Democrats. The more numerate people in this sample have no problem recognizing the correct answer when it shows that gun control reduced crime. But if the data showed that gun control increased crime, then all of a sudden numeracy didn't help. Remember, this is the exact same data and question as the skin cream example. The only difference is now that data is presented in a political context. And the biggest difference in performance is among the most numerate people. They're scoring a lot worse than they should have.
The low numeracy people are about 25 percentage points less likely to get the right answer if that answer is threatening to their ideology than if it's consistent with their ideology. The people who are high in numeracy, on the other hand, 45 percentage points less likely to get the right answer.
Rather than using their mathematical ability to come to the correct conclusion, they somehow selectively apply it to justify the conclusion they already believed beforehand.
Illegal guns less
Illegal crime.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have thought that.
That as numeracy increases, people are more divided about the efficacy or the risks of gun control regulation. The same thing with fracking. And same thing with global warming. We see the polarization conditional on numeracy. But we also see this same effect when we measure people's reasoning proficiency in other ways. The people who are high in science literacy, more polarized than the people who are low. The people who are high in actively open-minded thinking, you see more polarization, not less, as they become more proficient in this kind of thinking.
Based on this data, of course, I'd want to look into it and look at all the sources. And of course, there are sources from sources because people are always citing each other.
So
but yeah,
the numbers are actually not real whatsoever.
It looks, but if I were to look at this pragmatically, I would just say that the playing field seems pretty even here.
Pretty even?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Now, everyone wants to believe that they are rational, that they could change their beliefs in light of the evidence.
If you encountered evidence on a political issue that you were like, this is good evidence, I've done my research, but it contradicted your political belief on that issue, how would you react to that?
I considered myself to be a little bit open-minded in that aspect.
At least be open to learning.
Yeah.
If it's on paper and that's the way it is, I would have to go with that.
I'm gonna have to deal with it. I can't be like, well, I feel like it's different.
All I see here are people who will continue to hold partisan beliefs regardless of the evidence, all the while deluding themselves into thinking they came to these beliefs via an independent, sober consideration of the facts. The truth is that mostly we believe what we believe to fit in with our tribe. And that, in the most important way, is highly rational. Because humans are very social creatures, and for most of our evolution, we've depended on each other for survival. Being ostracized from the group is almost as bad as walking off a cliff. If we question the status quo by rejecting what those around us accept as true, we jeopardize our place in society.
Man, I've learned that people are not as dissimilar as we think, that there is so many similarities between sides that we think share nothing in common.
I attended Zoom meetings in the opposite party, and it was kind of scary because they sounded just like my side.
It makes you think about what we could get done if we didn't have that burden. And I think it would be a pretty different world and pretty extraordinary if we managed to figure that out.
So what do we do about this? Well, I don't think there is an easy solution, but Kahan has identified a few angles that might work. One is avoiding partisan rhetoric. Rather than talk about gun control or climate change, avoid the loaded terms and instead focus on specific local policies. No buzzwords that could trigger anyone into tribal thinking, no villainizing the other side, just constructive solutions that make sense given the data. One example comes from Southeast Florida, where a bipartisan group of lawmakers have joined together to take action on sea level rise. The plans don't debate whether climate change is man-made or not, they just deal with existing challenges faced by residents. The other thing is to foster a curious mindset.
Maybe the science-curious people, they're more willing to examine all the evidence, including information that's inconsistent with their political ideology.
With increasing science comprehension usually comes increasing polarization on political topics. But with increasing science curiosity, this same increase in polarization is not observed. That is a start. I am not going to claim to have the solution. Problems of this sort are likely as old as the human species itself. They are just much more obvious now that everyone can post, tweet, comment, and basically shout loudly into this nearly infinite digital space. The only thing I hope to do is bring some awareness. The beliefs of most people are not formed by a careful consideration of the data. That includes me, and it probably includes you. Acknowledging this is an important first step. One organization that is trying to tackle polarization and our information echo chambers is Ground News. So we specifically asked You are not looking at a yellow ball. Your brain might think you're looking at a yellow ball, but look closer. The screen you're watching this on displays color using only red, green, and blue subpixels. The yellow your brain thinks it's seeing is actually a mix of red and green light. The camera I'm talking to right now has a sensor composed of red, green, and blue sensitive photosites. Again, no yellow. Of course, I have the ball here in my hand, so I am looking at a yellow ball. Or am I? After all, my eyes aren't so different from that camera. The human retina only has cone cells sensitive to red, green, or blue wavelengths of light. To perceive other colors, we have to integrate the inputs from those three cone types. When yellow light enters my eye, it stimulates my red and green sensitive cone cells, although not as much as pure red or green light would. With red and green sensitive cones equally excited, my brain tells me I'm looking at yellow. This is how our technology, our cameras and screens and projectors can trick our brains into seeing a whole rainbow of colors using just 3 wavelengths of light, by triggering our 3 different types of cone cells in different proportions. So, is the ball really yellow? What does yellow even mean? A lot of people would say that color is the wavelengths of light that an object reflects. In other words, like Aristotle thought, color is a property of the object. But looking at the same ball on a screen, your eyes only sensed red and green light, yet your brain still perceived it as yellow. So it's also possible, like Galileo believed, that color isn't a property of an object at all, but a phenomenon of the mind instead. But whose mind? Because we aren't the only animals that can see the world in color.
We oftentimes don't really think about how other animals see color. So for example, we buy our dogs bright red or orange toys that are only bright red or orange for us and not for them because they can't see orange or red as being distinct from green.
So maybe we should start taking in the world from more than just the human perspective. Doing that might just teach us why color vision evolved in the first place.
We're actually towards the lower end of the spectrum, honestly. We're a step up from our household pets, maybe, if they're cats or dogs. but not nearly as good as many animal groups out there: butterflies, birds, fish, lizards, jumping spiders. Jumping spiders are harmless creatures, actually. They don't ever really get big enough to pose much of a threat to humans. Of course, if you were a small insect, yes, you would absolutely need to be afraid of a jumping spider.
They'll take down prey that's sometimes like 2 or 3 times their own body size.
The Chinese word for jumping spider translates literally to fly tiger, and that's the way I like to think about them, is the kind of small cats of the undergrowth.
Jumping spiders are everywhere. They're in your backyard, they're probably in your kitchen.
There are about 6,000 species of jumping spiders known. Some are sort of furry, some are sort of shiny, striped, spotted, red, green, blue, pretty much anything you can imagine. It's like every one is a little work of art.
As a group, spiders aren't known for their vision. I mean, most species are nocturnal, and for many, their webs act as a sort of extra sense organ. So they just don't need to see that well. But jumping spiders, as active daytime hunters, well, they're different. Not only do they have great eyesight, but different species have different forms of color vision. Look at those eyes.
Jumping spider eyes are fascinating. And when I say eyes, I mean 8 eyes. Jumping spiders split up things like motion detection and light sensitivity to some eyes, and then color vision and fine detail vision into others. The pair of eyes that are perhaps the most fascinating or most unusual are what we call the principal eyes. And those are the really big eyes in the front of the face that make jumping spiders look a little cute, if you're willing to say a spider looks cute ever. And those are built unlike any other eye in the animal kingdom.
It turns out, the way jumping spiders perceive color has everything to do with the anatomy of those principal eyes.
They're really actually built a lot like a Galilean telescope or binoculars. That big lens that you see from the outside of the animal is one of 2 lenses in these eyes. And in between those 2 lenses is a long fluid-filled tube. At the end of that fluid-filled tube is a second lens, and what that lens does is it magnifies the image that that first lens projects down that long tube. And in that way, it increases the ability to see detail by the retina that sits right below it.
And when it comes to seeing detail, it's hard to beat a jumping spider.
For most animals, the bigger the eye, the better it functions. Jumping spiders absolutely break this rule. The secondary eyes can see the world about as well as the absolute best insect eyes out there, better than the world's biggest dragonflies, whose entire head is consumed by an eye. The principal eyes, they can actually see pattern in the world better than a lapdog, a house cat, an elephant, and nearly as good as the sharp-sighted pigeon. But it's a very narrow slice of the world that they can see. It's about like your thumb held at arm's length.
And it's only in that narrow slice of the world that jumping spiders can see fine detail and color.
So, the jumping spider's secondary eyes give them a full 360-degree view of the world. Now imagine most of that's in black and white. When you see something move, you can swivel to look at it. And now, anything that's really of curiosity to you, you can add to this world of black and white vision, fine detail, and color. But you can only do it moment by moment. So you're really kind of painting additional details about color and pattern that you couldn't see otherwise. It's a wild world to try to put yourself into.
As they sweep their principal eyes across a scene, some species of jumping spiders are adding a lot more color information to their world than others. Most jumping spiders, including this one, are dichromats, meaning they have 2 types of color-sensitive cone cells in their retinas, just like dogs and most other mammals.
And by comparing those 2 kinds of cells and how they respond to light in the environment, they get a coarse understanding of color. They can tell the difference between UV, violet, blue, and green.
But some types of jumping spiders are trichromats, with 3 types of cones, like humans, and others are tetrachromats, like birds. The weird thing is, all these species with expanded color vision aren't necessarily close relatives.
In jumping spiders, we have huge variation, even from closely related groups and how well they're able to see color in the world. Jumping spiders are reinventing, in some ways, the ability to see color over and over again in different ways.
That makes jumping spiders pretty special. I mean, consider primates. Old world monkeys, apes, and humans all have trichromatic color vision. But we also share a common ancestor, so our color vision probably evolved only once, and then it stuck around. This is where jumping spiders really stand out. The ability to see red, for example, has evolved several times in jumping spiders. Researchers know that because they've figured out how different groups are related. And by they, I mostly mean jumping spider fanatic Wayne Madison.
Oh my gosh, Hawaika. Fantastic. Beautiful male. Ah, it's been 30 years since I've seen a live Hawaika.
He is absolutely Mr. Jumping Spider. His expertise really is in jumping spider taxonomy.
I work on the evolutionary tree of jumping spiders. The evolutionary tree of life is basically the pathway of genetic descent that links all of us.
The position of different species on this evolutionary tree can tell us how they ended up with the traits they have. Like, if most jumping spiders don't see red, but two species on two very different parts of the tree do, chances are that those two species evolved those abilities independently.
In which case, then we can start to ask questions like, what's driving that evolution? Do they have similar ecologies? Do they hunt similar prey? And try to really understand what selective forces are leading to these expanded color vision systems.
It might help them find food or discriminate tasty prey from prey that can harm them.
Because, of course, lots of small insects are brightly colored, and some of them are using those bright colors to advertise that they're toxic.
Another possibility is that seeing a richer world of color might help animals, from lizards to spiders, choose better mates. To test these ideas, the researchers needed to know which of the 6,000 species of jumping spiders had expanded color vision and which didn't. And outside of a few well-studied species, no one really knew. So the team set out to collect spiders from every major branch of the jumping spider family tree.
One of our first things is just prioritizing where to go and what to look for. And so it's a lot of sampling in a lot of places.
Let's see who lives here.
It's kind of like Pokemon Go, except the Pokemon are real, they're smaller than your pinky fingernail, and they're really good at hiding.
Some jumping spiders have evolved to be really fine-tuned to a particular situation. So for example, there are termite-eating specialist jumping spiders that you're only going to find around termites. There was this one species that we only found in piles of bones in South Africa. Who knows what it was doing there, but we quickly learned that that was the only place in the environment we were going to find it. And so that's part of the fun of it. I feel like it's a bit of a treasure hunt, really.
With no proverbial stone left unturned, the team returns to their labs with hundreds of spiders, representing many different species. They want to figure out which species have expanded color vision, how each species does it, and why. It's actually a hard question to tell how animals can see color. We can't just connect our brains to see what they see. So how do we do it?
We begin by using a technique called microspectrophotometry. It's a really long word. What it simply means is a microscope paired with a device that measures different wavelengths of light, a spectrophotometer.
The researchers take ultra-thin slices of jumping spider retinas, and then they measure the wavelengths of light absorbed by individual cone cells. With enough of these measurements, they can tell if a species is a dichromat, trichromat, or tetrachromat, and what wavelengths of light its cells are best at detecting. But that's not the whole story.
Having that knowledge of what's in the retina tells us what is or isn't possible for these animals to see, but it doesn't actually tell us what they do see or how they might use that. And so the gold standard for establishing that an animal can see color is to do so behaviorally.
In other words, we somehow need to ask the spiders what they can see and then understand their answers. Figuring out what's going on inside a spider's mind is difficult. It's no surprise that it takes a group of expert zoologists to do so. But our own minds can be just as complicated, yet we rarely talk with mental health experts to help us interpret our thoughts and emotions. Whether you're feeling depressed, anxious, or are just stressed and want someone to talk to, I think if your work comes more than a therapist and a potassium your first AC
that move. And these responses can be guided by color.
The theory is simple. You show the spider a screen with a moving shape that differs from the background in color, but not in brightness. And you see if the spider tries to follow.
The problem with letting the jumping spider actually turn and respond is that they'll absolutely do so, but it changes some of what they see. So what we want is to really have some control over what the spiders can see at any given moment.
So the researchers hold them in place with tiny magnets attached to their heads.
What we do is we give them a ball to stand on. They actually hold it with their feet. And we can monitor how that ball moves around in their feet to know where they would want to go.
If the spider turns the ball to the left, it's probably trying to look to the right to follow the moving shape. And that's evidence the spider can discriminate between the colors of the shape and the background. Once the team knows which species can see which colors, the next question is, how do they do it? What's different in the DNA of these spiders that can see and discriminate more colors? If you ask Megan Porter, a lot of it comes down to genes that encode proteins called opsins.
The way that animals achieve color vision is to have different copies of this opsin gene, and those variations then are what produce proteins that are sensitive to different colors of light. The first technique that we generally go to with a new species is called transcriptome sequencing. And this is where we can take the entire head of a jumping spider and we can get the sequences for every single gene that is expressed in that tissue.
This method gives the researchers an inventory of all the genes being expressed. In other words, all the genes that are copied out of the DNA and sent to make a protein. Then the team can figure out where each of these genes is expressed, in which eyes and in which parts of the eye.
And we do that using a fancy technique called immunohistochemistry.
The researchers basically create glowing molecular tags specific to each protein they're interested in.
And then looking for which parts glow in the right color, we can figure out where each opsin is being expressed, where the protein is located.
The team is especially interested in genes that are expressed in the retinas of the principal eyes. These are the genes most likely to be related to changes in color vision. Already, this process of asking which species have expanded color vision and how they accomplish it has led to some surprising discoveries. The researchers already knew that the ability to see and discriminate more colors had evolved more than once among jumping spiders, but they hadn't realized just how widespread this ability would be. After measuring 45 species across the evolutionary tree, the team has already found as many as 12 independent changes in color vision. In evolutionary terms, jumping spiders seem to be evolving new, expanded forms of color vision all the time. And different species have acquired their new visual capabilities in very different ways. Take, for example, the ability to see red. Most jumping spiders only have green-sensitive and UV-sensitive photopigments in their retinas. But some species became sensitive to red when their green-sensitive opsin gene was accidentally duplicated in the genome, and the new copy started to evolve, shifting its sensitivity to longer wavelengths.
So in our eyes, that's exactly what happened. The opsin gene for our green-sensitive visual pigment was duplicated, and the second version evolved to be more red sensitive. And we see this happen over and over and over again in jumping spiders.
But other jumping spiders see red in a totally different way. Rather than evolving new photopigments, they added an internal filter to some of their green-sensitive cone cells, which cuts out green light and forces those cells to respond only to longer wavelengths like red.
They can basically create two kinds of cells from the same type of photoreceptor simply by using a filter in front of some of them and not in front of others.
All this evolutionary innovation makes the original question even more intriguing. Why evolve expanded color vision in the first place? That's the question Lisa Taylor is trying to answer. For a visual predator like a jumping spider, better color vision could mean finding more prey. It could also mean avoiding prey that might be harmful.
And so a lot of prey in the environment advertise their toxicity with bright colors, and particularly with long wavelength colors such as red and orange. So we're testing the idea that the ability to use color vision will help these spiders learn to avoid and continue to avoid red prey that tastes bad.
In this experiment, all the prey are termites. Some have a dab of red paint on their backs, and others have a dab of gray.
And this doesn't affect their behavior in any way. They still move around naturally, and the spiders really like to eat termites.
The red termites also get treated with a compound called Bitrex, which is actually the most bitter substance known.
And yeah, it turns out that the spiders also think it tastes disgusting. So we can simultaneously and independently manipulate color and palatability.
In other words, the researchers can make the termites red and bitter, gray and tasty, or if they want to mess with the spiders, gray and bitter or red and tasty. The first part of the experiment is the training phase. Basically, the spiders get to choose from a tiny buffet of termite prey, each one in its own little petri dish.
In 3 of the petri dishes, they get a red-painted, bitter-tasting termite, and then the other 3 petri dishes, they get a gray-painted, very tasty termite. As they interact with this prey, they are constantly learning, and it's constantly being reinforced that whenever they attack something red, they get a mouthful of bitter-tasting termite, and whenever they attack something gray, they get a mouthful of tasty termite. The first spiders to go through this experiment are Habernatus pyrithrax, and we started with them because we know that they have good color vision that extends into the long wavelengths.
Habernatus pyrithrax is one of the species that can see red using a red filter in front of some of its green-sensitive cone cells.
Our data so far suggests that the spiders are really good at learning the rules.
And once they learn the rules, then the real experiment begins. The spiders hunt for all their food in a setup just like the termite buffet where they were trained, except that for half of the spiders, there's a big difference. Some of the termites are still bitter, but they're all gray. The color cues are gone. Now the question becomes, do the spiders that have color cues available, in other words, the ones for which bitter termites are still red, do they do better?
So our data so far show that they do fare better when they have access to those color cues. They lay eggs sooner, and that they're also heavier at the end of the experiment if they're in the treatment group where they have access to color cues.
One hypothesis for why primates evolved expanded color vision is to distinguish ripe from unripe fruit, or tender new leaves from older, tougher ones. In other words, telling good food apart from bad food. Kind of like what these spiders are doing.
Here, we've got this kind of evidence in a jumping spider, and we're going to repeatedly test that in other jumping spider species that have different forms of color vision.
The team predicts that spiders with expanded color vision will use color cues to their advantage, so they'll do better when color can tell them which prey items taste bad. Species that can't see red won't get any benefit from the warning colors or from the training. If the data support these predictions, these will be some of the first experiments in any species to reveal an evolutionary advantage to seeing and discriminating more colors. But feeding behavior can't be the whole story, because the spiders had some more surprises in store.
For example, there's a genus of jumping spiders in Central America called Mexagonus, where males, and only males, sport incredibly bright red colors on parts of their body that they use during courtship.
We thought for sure the female has got to be paying attention to red, distinguishing it from other colors. They've got to have red color vision in some special way.
And it turns out that at least by our measurements, they don't have the ability to see red. They just have UV and green sensitive cells in those principal eye retinas.
I don't mind being proved wrong at all. It usually means something more exciting because it means that, oh my God, there's something cool and new in the world, right? And you've learned something new.
So what's going on here? To help answer that question and maybe understand why some spiders are displaying to one another with colors they can't see, it's time to revisit the jumping spider retina.
Instead of just one retina like we have, they have a stack of translucent retinas right on top of each other.
One thing that we think that this layering does is to correct for a problem that the optics present to the retina. It's called chromatic aberration.
Most optical materials, like these glass prisms, refract or bend short wavelength light, like blue and UV, more strongly than long wavelength light, like red. That's chromatic aberration. Lenses do this too. In photos taken with vintage camera lenses, you can often see a fringe of color around high contrast edges. The sensor in a camera is a single flat layer of photosites, so getting the different colors of light to focus in the same plane is critical. Modern camera lenses correct for chromatic aberration using complicated optical designs with lots of lens elements.
But the other solution is to put different color-sensitive cells at the right depths behind the lenses so that the colors that they're sensitive to are in proper focus.
That's exactly what jumping spider retinas do. And this gets us one step closer to understanding what red might mean to a spider that can't actually see red. In the jumping spider eye, the cells sensitive to shorter wavelengths are generally closer to the lens, and those sensitive to longer wavelengths are farther away. But most jumping spiders are dichromats. They only have 2 cone cell types. So why have 4 layers in their retinas?
Typically, the bottom or farthest away from the lens 2 tiers, we call those tiers 1 and 2, those are both typically sensitive just to green light. And with a retina like that, an object in that world might appear in different focus in tier 2 than in tier 1.
Researchers in Japan have shown that jumping spiders can actually use this discrepancy in focus to perceive depth and distance in their environment.
But there is a liability with this system. It only works if you're just using one color of light, like green. If you start to mix in other colors of light, for example red, then the system creates errors. Essentially, colors like red might create this perception of being close or being looming towards the receiver. And that would provide a totally different perceptual experience for the viewer.
So a jumping spider's red coloration might not look red to another jumping spider, but instead create a sort of depth illusion. But why would a male spider benefit from displaying an optical illusion?
One thing about jumping spiders is that females often are quite aggressive towards prospective mates. In fact, they can often eat the male rather than allowing him to mate with them. So these males, when they're dancing for females, are really actually dancing for their lives in many instances.
If a female thinks a male is closer than he really is, that could throw off her attack. Or maybe confusing the female pays off in other ways.
If she can't quite figure out the male's display, she might stick around paying attention to it for longer, and this might result in better outcomes for the male at the end of courtship.
And amorous male spiders might not be the only ones exploiting these depth illusions.
So imagine a red prey item. We might look at it and say, that's probably toxic. And it's warning birds that it's toxic. But another possibility is that it's red simply to look like it's closer to a jumping spider so that it has a better chance of escaping. We also see small insects with red and blue patterns on them, which would create a really complicated visual illusion that might simply baffle it and require it a longer period of time before it judges distance. Even a split second can really matter.
But in this tiny game of cat and mouse, a spider that could see and discriminate red from green would be a lot harder to fool. And this could be another surprising benefit of color vision, one that isn't really about color at all.
And what we really need to ask whether or not this hypothesis is even plausible is really good high-resolution measurements of the distances of things in their eyes, including the retina and the lenses, from live animals.
This information you can't just get from preserved specimens on microscope slides, but there is another way. By using a particle accelerator called the Advanced Photon Source, the researchers have started to collect high-resolution X-ray videos through the spider's exoskeletons.
This has never been done before. It's in X-ray, so we can see through their eyes, and we can see how these eye tubes are moving around.
If the spider's retinal movements change the shape or length of their eye tubes, that'll affect what they're capable of perceiving.
It would change how they experience depth. It would change how they experience color. Previously, this information has only been collected from dissections. So we're very excited to get super high resolution videos of the inside of the spider's head as it's performing complicated visual motions.
Unfortunately, a few months after their initial tests, the Advanced Photon Source shut down for upgrades that'll take over a year to complete. So it looks like we'll have to wait a little longer for some of the answers the team has been looking for.
We know that the retinas can be moved around and that they maybe have between a 50 and 60 degree travel. Not only can they be moved in the horizontal plane, but in the vertical plane, and they can actually be twisted to change the orientation of their field of view.
The question is, how do these movements affect what the spiders can focus on? Or how they sense depth? Or even how they perceive color? It's this connection between focus, depth, and color that makes these spiders so intriguing.
It opens up all sorts of questions about what color is in the first place.
It's already clear that these spiders have a lot to teach us about color vision, how and why it evolves, and how many forms it can take, even within a single group of animals. If our understanding of their visual system is correct, the experience of color for jumping spiders might even be three-dimensional in a way that's totally different from how we see the world. And we haven't even talked about their other senses, like their ability to communicate through vibration. When you think about it, you realize that the universe we humans perceive, even with all our technology, is just a sliver of what's out there.
If we owe anything to the world, it's to allow the world to be experienced in the fullness of itself. I think this is one of the tragedies of extinction, is the loss of oftentimes a totally unique way of experiencing our world. A way of experiencing our world that we probably couldn't even imagine.
So, color. What is it? Is it an intrinsic property of an object, like Aristotle thought? Or something that exists only in the mind perceiving it, like Galileo believed? Maybe it's not an either-or question.
My belief is that color is something that emerges through the evolution of the eyes that see the world and the world that the eyes see. Color as a thing emerges through this dance, this evolutionary dance between what can be sensed about the world and those that are sensing it.
It's that dance playing out over millions of generations that created the colorful world we inhabit and shaped the countless ways that we and our fellow life forms experience it. Come to me. Okay, not that far. They're not called jumping spiders for nothing. Yeah, come on.
Breaking news! Breaking news! In America, there's an election coming, and the top state to watch for results this time is not one of the uncertain swingers, who knows whatever they'll do, but rather, step up here, Maine. You're the girl of this election season with the most wicked difficult decision, because bundled in with your vote for that other thing, you've also got to vote. Is it time for something new? A new flag? Because this is really breaking flag news, Maine edition. There's a new design to challenge your old look, but before you take a look, let's get a look at your current look. Been flying a classic Bluebell design? Let's show the class. Just a sec. Okay. Right. Starting at the top is a North Star dolled up with your motto, Durego. True enough. But back to the seal, sailor on one side, farmer on the other, both leaning on a shield showing off Maine's magnificent forests with a central pine below which a moose just chillin'. Oh, and below that, your name real big, Maine. Yeah, that's you. And this has been your flying flag for nigh on a century now. But the possibility of what could be new, what could be next. Behold, the Pine Design, a name that describes itself, but for the simplified North Star in blue. It's a flag with a great big white pine, New England's biggest symbol for New England's biggest, the great state of Maine. So class, side by side, what do we think? Hard telling, not knowing, eh? This is the election's most difficult decision. And it's a decision not just about Maine, for I see you Bluebells over there, looking a mite unsettled, and for sure, your Grand Bluebell Ball has been losing members of late, and with maybe Maine too, others are eyeing the exit. Sure, you've gone to a lot of trouble with the details of the decor. Thank you? But none of these flags do great when graded against guidelines for flags, especially the first. Keep it simple, kid. Something a child could draw. But yet, through tradition and what can only be described as the great internet flag wars, these designs have become American iconically, if perhaps a bit ironically. So if this family of flags, with its defenders, is destined to shrink yet still survive by keeping its strongest members, then Maine is clearly a top keep contender. For this grand forested land, the seal has a kind of wood-carved appeal. Those jaunty workers, that nameplate, they could be highway signs hand-carved to herald the state. So quaint! When it comes to Bluebell tradition, Maine's flag claims a strong position. But oh, well now. Turns out the new Pine Design isn't new at all. This is the original flag of Maine before the Bluebell fashion fad swept the states and swept it down cellar where it's been waiting this whole time to be spiffed up and brought up as the new old option. So Pine Design is the most traditional, and once knowing that, suddenly seems so. Look at that subtle off-white coloring, the tasteful retro of it. Now, the pine is complicated for sure, with 16 branches for Maine's 16 counties, but that first guideline is the child should be able to draw the flag recognizably, not perfectly. And a tree has got to be one of the top 3 can draw things for kids, next to houses and humans. So totally pass, but a bluebell among bluebells is gonna blur together. But you know what? Who cares? Guidelines aside, the question for a flag that matters most is, do folks want to fly it? So this election, Bluebell or Pine Design, which will Maine want to wave more? That's the result we'll all be watching for. So who's next? Who's it gonna be? Is it you?
Hello, you absolute legends. The Sid Meier's Civilization franchise is one of, if not the most important and influential video game series in the turn-based war strategy genre. Every game since Civ 1 from 1991 has been simply amazing, and the latest in the series, Civ 6, released in 2016, is arguably the greatest and deepest yet. People really love this game, and it appeals to a certain type of gamer. Not to overgeneralize too much, but in my opinion, Civilization is a thinking man's game. There are a lot of moving parts to consider, and there is a lot you need to learn if you want to have any semblance of competency, especially when versing other players instead of just the computer. Civ 6 is such a beloved game that even without any first-party support from developers, there still exist huge self-governed communities that facilitate constant multiplayer competition. For example, the Civ Players League, or CPL, is the main league for English-speaking players. The CPL has thousands of players, and it's where anyone serious about the game competes against other people. The CPL has strict rules that players need to obey in order to keep their access to the league. This ensures competition remains fair and healthy, and it stops issues that might arise from random public lobbies like people quitting games or trolling. It even has a competitive leaderboard which ranks players using the true skill rating system, similar to the ELO rating in chess. And for the past few years, one player has remained completely dominant on the ranks, holding the #1 position by a huge margin. This was a player by the name of Andrew, and last month, Andrew was banned by the CPL for cheating. Now I know what you're all thinking. Who would cheat in a game like Civilization? This game is sacred. Cheating is nothing short of blasphemy. You would have to be a real sicko to cheat in such a beautiful game. But it's true. Andrew had been cheating for years. And Andrew was the worst kind of cheater too. He was the kind of cheater who always bragged about being the best, who did everything he could, no matter how unsportsmanlike, just to get an edge. And when he was exposed, he lied and tried to deceive people in order to cover his tracks. He even resorted to filing a false copyright takedown against the video that exposed his cheating to the public. In today's video, we will take a look at Andrew, the biggest cheater in Civ 6 history, and I think you'll be shocked at the lengths Andrew has gone to in order to try and hide the truth. It's honestly one of the craziest responses I've ever seen. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, I absolutely love cereal, and I know you do too. But let's be honest, if you're someone like me who works out and wants to look as good as they can, the standard high-sugar cereal just doesn't fit into our diet. But thankfully, that doesn't mean we have to give up cereal forever, and that's where today's sponsor Magic Spoon comes in. Magic Spoon is a high-protein and zero-sugar cereal. It's specifically made for people like you and me who want to look really good and who value their health, but they don't want to give up the naughty things in life like cereal. I can fit Magic...
Alright guys, hello, welcome back. I'm back, sorry. I just cleaned my teeth a bit after I did the whitening. So, I essentially did 4 things today. I whitened my teeth, I worked out, I started to stream, and then I learned a little bit about spiders. I learned a little bit about, colors, I guess. Learn a little bit about how to ship things, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Right. So yeah, I did a lot of things. Oh, and politics and how people is affected by what they believe in, how they rationalize things. They have a tendency of bias, apparently. Anyways, yeah. So. Pretty good, pretty productive day. I drank my pre-rec, I feel energetic, but I fear this is going to be this one-off thing that I'm gonna be productive for one day and then tomorrow going back to relapse. I hope I can keep this up. I wish, I pray. I'm desperate. So I'm just gonna take a bath. I'm pretty happy with the results. I did not. Ow! Ow, my teeth. It just suddenly became really sensitive. Okay, it's gone now. God damn. Anyways, where were we? Look at the crookedness. Anyways, I'm just gonna do some cleaning downstairs, just a little vacuum and stuff, and then afterwards I'm going to do a little bit of programming, and then I start my day. Start my work, because I work at like 10. Yeah, so I still have like supposedly 1 hour. 1 hour of doing things. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't really have anything else to say, other than I'm gonna do this tomorrow as well, hopefully. I'll succeed. I'm gonna play a little bit of Genshin now. Just 15 minutes, nothing too much. And yeah, thanks for watching.